Hello, and we are live. So, hello, how's everybody doing this morning? So, you know the drill. You can download the project on GitHub. There is a new folder called Pokemon Project Advanced, so we'll be using that. Hello, Toril. Hello, Daniel. Yeah, I hope it's your second or third, at least during the lecture. Like, get your third coffee. Oh man. So, what do we have here? So first, when you open your new project or something, or get the Pokemon Project Advance, just click at Open Terminal and run npm install. So there are some dependency that need to be installed. Okay, it's quite fast on my end. And for running the same thing, just open terminal and say npm start. It's the same setup as we had on Thursday, right? So it opens like two different, it serves two different servers, HTTP localhost 3000 and localhost 1234. So let's open in browser. So it's localhost, oh man, localhost 3000 and localhost 1234. Give me a second. Oh yeah, okay, it works fine. So we'll see that our Pokemon is broken. We will need to fix that to work it properly, and we have our JSON server with all our Pokemon here. So last time what we did is actually opened our Pokemons here. So it's just a giant. It's a way of getting our Pokemons from a server. We used fetch for getting it, and we did some promises or async awaits. So we will be using today a fetch API to get all this good stuff from REST. So we should talk about REST API, and to talk about REST API and what actually means, or RESTful API, or whatever you want to call it, there is a lot of like different articles or different tutorials about REST APIs, and every programming language you can implement REST API in every programming language that I know of. So yeah, let's talk a little about it. So okay, yeah. Sorry, I got distracted by by the YouTube Studio. It does some glitchy stuff. So okay, it doesn't matter. So all that we did up until now was in here in the front end. So this is actually, let me get the pointer here. So this is actually a basic application architecture or web app architecture. We have some part front end, some part back end, and we have database. So front end is our HTML, our JavaScript, and CSS that runs in a browser. So every time a user gets to our website, it actually downloads or indexes HTML, JavaScript, and CSS to his computer and then run it in browser. The backend part is actually our code that runs on any server that we are hosting somewhere. So let's say that we are hosting it on some server. Let's say you can host it like anywhere that gives that option. Like I like DigitalOcean or AWS for do that, but there is like host on GoDaddy or something like that. Whatever you were quite a bit. It's totally fine. But we can put some code in there, and then it runs on our server there. And there is some database somewhere. So in our example, we will do our front end in JavaScript. We will use index.html, and backend DB will be served by our JSON server. So our backend is actually just a small app, a small code, or let's say an app that runs on our PC. So it's totally local. It's all in our example, everything is run locally. There is no it's not available on the internet. So okay, not here but here. So okay, let's look at this part. So communication between front end and back end. So what actually, so you can communicate with the RESTful API in this way. Frontend can send any HTTP request, and I will talk what is HTTP request in a second. In this example, it's a get HTTP request. So it sends Pokemon ID equals 1 to the backend, and backend responds with a JSON. Like most of REST API can work like this. You send something and you get JSON back. There is some REST APIs that return like XML or return some other like way of like writing data, of serializing data. In this example, we will be using JSON because JSON is like 99% of the time returned from our REST API, any REST API. So okay, so what is this GET and what's it like HTTP request? So if we go back to our example, or here, Pokemon here, and we open our console and we try opening network and refreshing, we will actually get a lot of different something here. Like what is this? If we click on it and open headers, we will see that actually this is an HTML request, what I was talking about. So every time we want to get something through the, let's say, internet, we actually need to use HTTP requests to get it. So in this in this local host, what's written here, we will actually get our index.html by calling HTTP localhost with port 1234. You will see that's the same as our URL with request method get. And what we get out of it is actually our HTML. So every time you do some interaction with a website or something, you're actually sending some HTTP requests to the server. So if I'm getting my JavaScript, here is script, I'm actually running this request here. And if we copy paste this into our browser, we will actually get our JavaScript open in a browser. So this is JavaScript file. And this is actually our JavaScript file of Pokemon. So we can see of Pokemon project. You will see here some like code that is that you can read. So we wrote that. Okay. So each time we need some data or something, we are actually running an HTTP request. So this example, like this part is we are getting the image. So the background image is also got. So any image, any resource, any CSS. So here is a CSS file of our like base CSS. Everything is downloaded to our computer via HTTP. So if we go to what is HTTP, it's actually a protocol that is really old because you can see here is 29 years old. So from 91. And you can actually get any resource like at least text or some binary data you can get through this protocol. At first was only text, but soon enough it was everything you need for building websites. So at the moment we are mostly working on HTTP version 2 protocol. Like there is some good stuff in there that's really cool, and maybe in the future I will do something about that, but that's pretty advanced for and not really useful for front end part. But okay. So anytime we get something from a server, we actually need to run HTTP request. So let's get back to this. So every time we want to get some data or get index HTML, or we want to get a CSS file or JavaScript file, we need to run some HTTP request. And the get part is actually something called HTTP verb. And there are a few HTTP verbs that are useful, and they do different operations, or at least they are let's say you can make them do anything, but the useful part is just an agreement that a verb does a certain operation. So get actually gets us a resource. So when they say get Pokemon with ID 1, we'll actually get our Pokemon with ID 1. So our useful verbs here are actually these three: get, put, post, and delete. It's similar to create, so read, create, update, and delete. So they are actually crude operations upon our collection. So get reads a record or reads all records, put, update, replaces a record, post creates a new record, and delete deletes from the database. Actually, deletes an existing record. Let's remove database from this discussion. So these four verbs are useful for anything that we will be doing today. Like there are some other verbs and they're not really useful for us while working on REST API. So these HTTP verbs are actually, okay, fine. So what we'll be doing today is actually first reading the Pokemon data from a JSON server and not using our local, like hard-coded in JavaScript Pokemon array. So this is the first thing. Later than that, we will try to delete anything and then post and put, and you will see that you need to do some fetch magic, and we need to understand fetch, how it works. So let me go to, so what we need to actually do is go and see like how to use fetch and how JSON server actually works, because JSON server provides the REST API that we want to consume. So we'll need to read documentation and see like what's going on, how we can do that, how we can get all the Pokemon, how to get the single Pokemon, how we can create a new Pokemon, and so on. So let's do that. So every time I need to use some REST API from somewhere, actually I need to have documentation of that REST API. And when you will be using or consuming any other REST API, there is probably some documentation there. If there is no documentation, that's pretty hard to get like the data from there and update it and like do some fine work with that. But let's go, and first what we want to do is actually open our using fetch documentation. So I will paste it in the chat. So let's go on using fetch and let's read a little bit about it. So, okay, the fetch API provides JavaScript interface for accessing and manipulating parts of the HTTP pipeline, such as requests and responses. Okay, what that actually means is we are actually calling the through HTTP or REST API or any backend. So we've seen this basic fetch example in our Thursday lecture. So you can write it like this, or you can write it with async await. But what this actually does is gets our, does this exist URL? Let's first check it out. No, it's just an example domain. But actually what this does is gets a resource from this URL, then reads it as JSON, and then console logs it. That's totally fine. That's perfectly fine. So how to do, so this is actually just a get call. So if you don't write verb inside of the fetch here, actually it just fetches and gets the data. So it calls get HTTP request. So okay. So if we pass an object behind the URL, so the URL will be maybe www.example.com, and if you pass this object here, we can actually pass things like method. So we can put get, post, put, and delete. See, these other parts are not really interesting, but we are mostly interested in this, how to change the method. So for us creating a Pokemon, we actually need to pass some data to our backend, right? We need to pass like a name of a Pokemon, like their ID, their types, and so on. And what we need to pass here is actually also the body. So body will be any data that's an object that will be stringify into a string. So our JSON will be just a giant string and will be passed to the backend. Also, body data type must match content type header. So in headers, we will actually need to write application JSON. So let us write that somewhere. So let us write that so we don't forget what's going on. Let's go in here. Let's create a new file and we will see fetch.js, and let's write what we need. What we actually need here is method should be post. Our headers should be content application JSON, and we should have our body stringified. So our body is stringified data. So let's delete everything here. Okay, and you will see that here is using async await, so that's perfectly fine. What we are doing here is actually we created a little like post data function. Okay, so it's post, header is application JSON, body is JSON stringify data, entry response. So what I'm doing now is actually what I'm doing whenever I get any new technology or any new API that I need to look at. I will go through documentation first to see what there is exactly, and most of the developers will do the same thing. So okay, we got something about post data. Okay, fine. And then when we calling that this function, we actually get URL and then some body passed there. That's also perfectly fine. This is actually the data that will be stringified to the body. So if we look here, if we go back here, there is always something, or in these examples there will be no body. We will see that body is passed through our through the HTTP request body. So there is something called HTTP request body. Okay, you will see when we start doing our post requests. So that's fine. Okay, this is some about the credentials, and you can see there's something called uploading JSON data. That's totally fine because that's actually what we need, right? So method is put, post, or put. Remember, put is for updating data, post is for creating data. Why are they called that? You need to ask people who invented HTTP protocol back in 91. Why is put and post? Why it's not like create and update? I'm still not certain about that. I'm not sure that anybody's certain about that. Okay. So yeah, what we did there, method is put, header is content application JSON, and body is JSON string by data. This is just a promise way of dealing with that, with then and catch, and not with async await. And data is passed here. Okay. Also, you can always upload the file with HTTP request out of multiple files. There is a lot of stuff there you can read here, and also there is a lot of headers. And then we go to the response object. So every time we call is this response are returned, fetch promises are so okay, yeah. So this is quite body for response, yeah. So the response objects are what we get back, and from where we will be reading our data. So from response, we remember what we did. Let's go to this data. Is actually return response JSON or return await response JSON is the same thing of writing when in return line, and we will get the data that our server put back. Okay, that's perfectly fine. So are you up with me? Are you following? Just yell in the chat, because this is the way that I do every like investigation, like in a in our REST APIs or any different APIs or new programming languages, something like that. It's quite important for you to understand where is the documentation of that API, of that library, anything similar like that. Go through it and then try to program something in there. Okay. So body. What we actually need is passing a stringify JSON to backend. So it's actually JSON, that's perfectly fine. Okay. And also there is like some of course there are some browsers that don't support fetch, but I think fetch, you will see here. So if you're using Internet Explorer, you're out of luck. Yeah, okay. And like streaming response body, okay, streaming response body is totally experimental. We'll need to look at this first row. So everything Chrome 42 is like 3 years old, so Edge I don't know. So Internet Explorer is not, there is no fetch in Explorer, but I'm certain you're not using Internet Explorer. Yeah. So even the Samsung Internet has the fetch working, so that's perfectly fine. So what we got from this documentation is actually how to write a post function, like post data function, and how to call our fetch API here. So this is quite important. So we know how to write it, and we will know how to use it in our app. So let's save that. Okay, perfectly fine. We know how to use fetch. We know how to write post, put, delete. We will just change our how it's called in this method or HTTP verb. There are multiple ways of calling something in programming, because why not? There is a lot more confusion about that. It's called HTTP method or HTTP verb. It's like post, get, put, and delete. Those are the important ones. And why am very strange. So we know how to use fetch, so that's perfectly fine. We will need just those examples. What we need now is actually, let's open our JSON server and let's see what's going in here. So I will paste this. So this is actually we are back to npm.js. npm.js is our repository for all our libraries. We are using JSON server, and JSON server is a small library what get the full fake REST API with zero coding in less than 30 seconds. Seriously. Great. And created with love for front-end developers. See? Somebody is thinking about front-end developers. Yeah, that's great. Okay, that's super. And there is table of content. So getting started, let's go through here. So we have installed the JSON server. Remember, we run npm install. There was already JSON server in package JSON as a dependency, and then created db JSON. We created data JSON here. And then we called JSON server watch.db JSON. Actually, we didn't call it watch. There is here in package JSON in our Pokemon Project Advanced. We can actually try it like with watch. Let's see what will happen if we say it like this. What's the difference? So when we are running npm start, we are actually running npm run start server and npm run start client. Npm server is JSON server and opens the data JSON, and our client is actually just opens the parcel. And parser is a bundler, if you remember our Tuesday lecture. So, okay, that's perfectly fine. And if we go to localhost 3000 posts, because post is this example right here, we will get some data back. So if we go here, we will get empty, but if you go to Pokemon with 1, we will get actually Bulbasaur. So you can see here, try to do that, you should get the Bulbasaur back in the JSON. So /Pokemon/1 returns Bulbasaur. Okay, that's cool. Let's go back to the documentation. Also, when doing requests, it's good to know if you make post, put, patch, or delete request, changes will be automatically saved to db.json using, okay, something, load-db. We will not use patch. That's another verb that we can use, but we're not going to use here. Your request body JSON should be object enclosed, for example. That's perfectly fine. ID values are not mutable. That means that ID cannot be updated. That's also perfectly fine in our example, because we don't want to update like Bulbasaur ID to 2. That makes no sense at all. And a post, put, patch request should include a content type application JSON, as we already put it in our function here. So in our function, we have content type application JSON in our headers. So headers is like a metadata of our HTTP request. It explains what we are sending in our body. That's like, yeah. So, okay. Based on the previous db.json file, here are all default routes. You can also add routes. Okay, we won't use that. So there is something called plural and singular routes. Okay, so we can actually, let's see here, get posts 1. So get posts let's try it with Pokemon. So let's try. Let's open our. Let me do it like this. This will be easy to see. So if we get /Pokemon, we will get actually all our Pokemons here. If you get Pokemon, so I haven't explained that, but when you're entering URL here, you're making a get request. And when we go to Pokemon/1, we will actually get a Bulbasaur. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so post, put, patch, delete works the same way. Post actually just creates, put changes if you call put on localhost 3000 /Pokemon/1, it actually will update our Pokemon here, and delete will delete it. But we need to pass the ID like this. Okay, that's perfectly fine for us. Then let's go the deeper properties and so on. So if I want to filter by name English, I can write here like name English is Abra, something like this. That's also useful if you're doing with anything like that. You can also limit, you can do some like page and limit to paginate return. So this is if you have like a billion of Pokemons, we can actually get like 1000 by 1000 by page and limit. So I can do something like page equals to 1 and say limit is 20 or 29 in this. Let's return 20. What we'll actually get, we will get like 20 by 20 Pokemon. So here are our first 10 Pokemon. Why 10 Pokemon? Haven't you limited to 20? Really, really strange. Oh, because I haven't wrote it like this. Okay, my mistake. So we were getting like 20 Pokemons by 20 Pokemons, and if we are increasing our page, we'll get like our second 20 Pokemon from 21 to 40. It's quite useful. So JSON server is really great for creating quick prototypes or mocks of our backend, because you don't need to understand backend at all. You just run JSON server and you get REST API from get-go. And there is like sorts and there is slices. So slices similar as an array. You can say from where to where. So let's say we want to get Pokemons from 60th Pokemon to like 100, and we are getting it. Try this. This is quite. It works exactly as array slice. Look at this. Great. So if you're understanding front end, you will understand this without any problem. That's pretty great. Yeah. Okay. Then there is something full text search. Okay, operators. Okay. But full text search. Wow. So what we actually do, we don't need to like do some crazy calculation in our front end for search to work properly. We can do like this. We'll get the Bulbasaur. So let's try Soar. Yeah, it works perfectly. So what we can do is actually use this full text search for changing our search operation in our front end. That's great. That's awesome. So you see that it's quite important to go through the documentation, because you can like discover some cool stuff like this. Okay, let's go. There is some relationship. It's not even all. Database. What? You can get the whole database like pasted here. Okay, you get the whole JSON file here. If we had multiple like data sets, actually this gets everything. And then there is something static files, so on. It doesn't, creating custom routes and so on, it doesn't matter. How to use it programmatically. So you can actually this is just another way of importing, but only on server. You can like require JSON server and then do some stuff there. So you can even call it programmatically without any problem. This is awesome. Yeah. So we went through the documentation, we found few cool stuff, and we found how to call on post. Let's not forget that, because we can always go back to this and read it here. So yeah, that's pretty cool. If you have any questions, just stop me and I will explain to you or go through documentation again. This is like a quite useful skill to have as a developer, that's reading documentation pretty fast and understanding what's in here. And you can't imagine like how much like bad documentation there is, and how much like bad documentation I read. Oh man. So that's pretty cool. So let's go back to our new advanced project and let's fix the stuff that I know that's broken. So let's just double check what's broken on our site. You remember, like, it's not loading. Why is not loading? Pokemon is not defined. And why is that? That's because we had two different. So this Pokemon project is just a copy of our Pokemon project like from week before. And why is not running here? Because we put two different scripts inside our index HTML, and that's not really kosher in our with our parser bundler, because parcel it expects only one entry file and the other files imported to that entry file. So let's do that. So in index.html we had data.js and script.js, and we don't need that anymore. So we can delete that script.js. We can write it to be type module. So our script.js will be the entry file, and data.js will be imported to our script.js. Okay. This is our script.js. So let's open our data.js. There is Pokemon and colors. We won't be using Pokemon. Okay, at least at the moment, let's export both of those. So export color, export Pokemon. And what happened here? Yeah. So we export colors and Pokemon. We go back to script. And on top of that, say import Pokemon and colors from data.js. In parcel, you can import like data.js or just data, right? So if there is no extension written here, they will presume that is a JavaScript file. So that's also okay. So let's try to see if it works. We imported Pokemon colors and we put the Can I open the data? We put the export on Pokemon and colors. Let us see. Yeah, it's working. There is some problem with our images. Let's see what's the problem. Oh, I haven't put it. Okay. We have a problem with our images. I haven't thought about this. So what's the problem? Our parcel bundler is not our server that hosts our index.html is actually not hosting our images. So how to fix that? I don't know by heart. We can try and look in the parcel documentation. So again, it's pretty important to understand where is the documentation and how to read it, because there are a lot of that, presumably. Let's open it and go to parcel.js. When we open, we have here parcel.js. So the thing that we need to read is actually getting started. So something, and what we need actually is assets. So assets or resources, no, parcel is bound around assets, so blah 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 blah. Help us improve. There is no documentation about that. Why I have been certain there is documentation about how to okay. Let me try and find that, or we'll be using without the images, but it's really shitty to not have images there. Yep, I'm not finding it. It doesn't matter, we'll be using without Pokemons. Static file folder, just a second, maybe here is something. Assets test case assets. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Oh man, I wanted to use images, but I totally forgot about this. And now I'm feeling bad. We'll have broken images. Why? Or we can get them from GitHub. How about that? Pokemon JSON. So I got our Pokemon JSON from our Pokemon dataset here. So I got it from this repository, so you can check it out. But what we can do is a bit hacky, but we actually can get our images from here. Okay. So let's try, these are like the big images. Let's try the thumbnails. So, let me try to see. Okay, so what we can do is a bit hacky, but it could work properly. We can use this as our host for Pokemon images. So if I write like 301, we will get Pokemon that's located on 301. We can use that. Let's try to use that. Okay. So in our where is it? The script.js, we actually, if you remember, we put the source of our image here. What we can do is actually comment this line and write a new line that says Pokemon image element dot source equals to dot slash, and no, we need to paste here. And what we will use this part as something like this. Let me go here. So Pokemon image select is the URL from GitHub, but we will just enter the number as we did programmatically here. So I will paste this so you'll understand, or copy that, and we can check it if it's working. Yeah, it's working perfectly. Is it working perfectly? Yeah, it is. Let me just open again because I had some infinite loops here. Yeah. It's still loading because you are downloading it from a website, but yeah. You can see them load real time here. That's awesome. So the good thing, like in Chrome, is actually that it will optimize your images downloading. So if you don't see the images, they will be postponed until you see them, or until there is like free resources on your internet to be downloaded. That's awesome. Does this work? Yeah, this works perfectly. So yeah, so with this we actually made our Pokemon project works with parcel and so on. So what's the next step? Next step is to actually, these links are broken. We can also remove this line, like this ref line, and we can actually make it back to div, because we are not going to be using the details HTML in this example. So we actually removed the clickable links on our Pokemon. Okay, so you can see here that we actually created our element to be div and not Pokemon, and yeah, that works totally fine. So what we need to do, we want to get our Pokemon not from our data, but we want it to be get every time we reload the page from our server. So if there is some changes on the server, we want it to be refetched We want it to be refetched, yeah. So let's start with doing that. So what we need here is actually a way of getting our Pokemon data and putting it we want it to be got here. So when we call create Pokemon list, which is here, we wanted to fetch all the data and then to be created here. So okay, so the first thing that we need to do, we actually need to create this create Pokemon list to be async. So I showed you how to do it when we write a function like this. So the action function ABC and so on. And if you write it in this lambda way or fat arrow way or arrow function way, we actually need to put it here. So we have const create Pokemon list is actually async. So we can call am I still alive? There was some hiccup in my if something broke or you couldn't hear me for few seconds, it was because my network broke for a few seconds. Real strange. Okay. Yeah. So where we were? Okay, we turned our create Pokemon list to async, and we need to get this Pokemon to be fetched and not included from here. So let's delete that. We can leave our colors here, and we will actually create a fetch here that creates our Pokemon. So const Pokemon. We want it here to be fetched, and then we can use Pokemon. So let's go back to our JSON server, click on Pokemon. This actually gets all our Pokemon that's needed. So we need to call localhost 3000 Pokemon. Let's try to write that. So if you remember, if you remember how to write fetch, I actually never remember these parts by heart, but let's try it. So const our response is equal to fetch Pokemon, and we should put it await. So what this will do, response will be wait for fetch to be over, and then we'll get the response data. Our Pokemon is actually just, we should await response, wait, not await, response.json. So we want to get our data as JSON into Pokemon. So these two lines should actually, let's try. Should this work? Yeah, this works perfectly. So what's happening here, we can open our network. Let's close this random stuff. And what we got here, you will see. Okay, let's finish. So what we got here, we got our index.html, CSS, JS, multiple JS files, they're perfectly fine. Our font, okay. Then we got that's something from our parcel server. That's all totally fine. And then we got Pokemon. So we called the request URL http localhost 3000 Pokemon with request get, and we got our JSON here. You'll see this our Pokemon JSON. And after that, what it did, we got every image like downloaded. Don't worry, it will actually, will it? It doesn't matter. It can be downloaded every time. So it's pretty cool. So we got our images and we got our Pokemon from a fetch. That's pretty cool. You can see the Pokemons are from our fetch data and not from our local. So we can actually, what we can do is finally delete this Pokemon part here. So our data file will be only 20 lines long. That's awesome. So let's go back to script. So that's perfectly cool. So we are actually calling our create Pokemon list, which fetches all our data and then does some cool stuff with it. So your Pokemon project, the next Pokemon project should be working with getting our JSON data and then getting all the images and so on and so on. So let's change also our filter Pokemon part. So the problem bit here was that we use the name English to lowercase include so on. This is like really hard to read. This is really confusing for you, I know, but what we can do actually is just filter the data with a simple fetch and then call these two lines that will set display to something. So let me first test our full text search in Pokemon. So let's go back to our localhost 3000 Pokemon. Then we say q equals to empty. So one problem here is that if you have an empty array, we will not know if there is something that exists. Oh, let's go like this. Oh, well, no, actually, if our query is empty or it's an empty string, we will get all the data here. If we say soar, we'll get only 3 Pokemon. It's perfectly fine, so it works perfectly. But we will actually remove this crazy line here. So this is like filter by name, Pokemon elemental list filter, and so on and so on. What we'll actually do is we'll call query and we'll get the data like an data from here. So let me double check this. The problem here, yeah. So there will be some problems here because we are filtering an elemental list by the whole object, and this. Oh, let's try it. So, but we will see there will be some problems with that. So we can copy this way of writing this, and then what we can do is actually move this. We will call by q equals to text. So full text search actually means it will search every JSON through the whole JSON, through every property, and try to find this text. And it's totally case insensitive, so you can do anything like that. And this is not like response won't be Pokemon like response JSON, but filter by name. So let's try this if this works. So it's just a request. Let's go back to our Pokemon. Ooh, yeah, we haven't put this is async. So filter Pokemon list should be async. I forgot to put that. So every time we call wait, our function where we call it should be async. Okay, let's try. Okay, you see there's some problem, and I will explain you why. You can say property defined or undefined. What? Let's try. Oh, because okay, that's why. So in our example here, we are actually reading elemental list. So that's the list of our elements. We pushed the Pokemon element in a Pokemon element list, and then we filtered our element list. So what we need to do here is actually this is just let's say found Pokemon, and we need to we should create a filter by name in a way. So we should filter. So we should filter. Okay. So what we can actually do here is found Pokemon is JSON. Pokemon element lists are element like HTML elements in our. So actually what we can do here is we can filter by ID of found Pokemon. So we can write another line here, say const found Pokemon IDs equals to found Pokemon map Pokemon to Pokemon ID. That will create an array of our just Pokemon IDs. And what we can do here is filter our Pokemon list by saying found Pokemon IDs dot includes p dot id. Let me just that's an element, we have it put in dataset, so something like this. So if you remember correctly, we actually put, we put the this is not the ID. Oh man, this is actually not the ID. This is actually just a number. Like, what is the number? We will have a lot of like different, but we can fix this. Okay, we can fix it. Pokemon image element. Okay, we can write here, so Pokemon element dot ID is actually p dot ID. So this line will put the ID inside or on every element. So if we double check here, what will this do is actually put our ID here. So this will be ID1, and that's fine. The data ID is 0 because it's created from the element from Pokemon that's on position 0. So we actually can get not the dataset data, but the ID directly. So what this will do, we will fetch our Pokemon with the query text. It will do the full text search. We will get the found Pokemon JSON. Then we need to get all the IDs and then filter our Pokemon elemental list by IDs. So let's try to see if it works. Excuse me, it doesn't work. We broke something, or at least I broke something. I don't know. Let me call debugger here, so we will see and debug everything. So let's try here. So what happens here? Our found Pokemon ID is what? Let us see. Closure, context. Where is watch? We need to put here found Pokemon IDs. Let's see. It's array of 721 Pokemon. And then after so Pokemon element list. So filter by name would be, let's try it right here. Filter by name, array 0. So we have some logical mistake inside of this line. So what's the logical mistake here? Found Pokemon IDs includes PID. You know why? Because these are numbers and these will be strings. Oh man. So every time you get any property that you wrote on your element, they will be transformed into strings. That's why. And then let's try to refresh this and yeah, now it works perfectly. So just remember that this is an element list. This will be an HTML element, and every property on an HTML element will be actually a string. So you can see those here. When we inspect an element here, you will see that there is an ID with quotation marks like 4 and that ID 3. So it's actually a string. We can test that. So when we get document query selector, and we will say ID is 4 for Charmander, right? Let me see this. Document valid query selector 4 is not valid selector. 4 is not valid selector. Why? Really strange. But ID is 4. Strange stuff. Okay, doesn't matter. But you will see it is an I string. This is really like, okay. Can I call it something like this? Okay. It's not valid selector. The number ID is not. Okay. I haven't noticed. So this is also new to me. So it shouldn't be a number in query selector probably. But okay, it works fine now. Let's try to write. Yeah. So yeah, okay. There are 3 choose Pikachu, Raichu, and what was the and Pichu. Okay, fine. Okay, but our filtering works now fine. So every time we try to filter, you will see in our network, you can just open it. If there is some data here, you can press clear. You will see every time we type something, we are getting an query to the backend and trying to full text search for something. So emo. Why are they emos? Let me double check. Ice. Why is that English? Oh, in French. we actually can search like this. So yeah. You see, there's Japanese search. So the full text search is much better than our implementation because you can search like even types. So we can say steel. We got all the steel types here. And if we say grass, we will get every grass type here because we're actually searching every property value in our JSON. So that's pretty cool. So let's say fire. Yeah, we got all the fire Pokemon here. That's awesome. There's the dragon type, like, right? Yeah. That's awesome. So you see JSON server is pretty powerful, and implementation like this, like full text searches in backend, are much cheaper than in front end. So every time you need to go through a lot of data or something like that, backend operations are quite much cheaper than running it on your front end or on your client's computer. Because remember, this can be run in a mobile phone or somewhere where there is no like much computing power, but these work perfectly fine. So what to do now? What I want to do now is actually create a new Pokemon. So I will create a new Pokemon with our fetch data here. So what we can do here is define our URL to be localhost Pokemon, something like this. Data will be empty, the default, but what we can do here is actually export this. Export function post data. So we can import this post data here, and we actually can send a new Pokemon to the backend with this. So let's try to do that. How about that? So let's go back to our not details but script. Let's try first to create a new Pokemon. Import post data from /, and we call that fetch. let's go to our Pokemon here and let's get our Bulbasaur. So that's the first Pokemon. I don't know how to write. Okay. So we actually need to send similar data like this, but without ID, because ID is incremental. So if we send a new Pokemon, actually its ID will be 809, I presume. So we can test that. But we actually need to post data here. So let's go here to our init and try to call post data. So if you remember about post data, what it does actually is takes an URL and some data of Pokemon, stringifies, and sends to the backend with post. So what we need to do here is actually just, we can actually just not put here. We can change a little bit. Let's change. It will be better like this. So this will be const URL will be a constant, and we will just send the data. We won't like enter multiple URLs at least. So maybe we should say post Pokemon. Maybe it's better than, or maybe create Pokemon. Now we're talking. Something like this. This is much better than the first thing. So we do export async function, create Pokemon, where data is empty if we haven't passed it, and then URL is this, and we call const response wait fetch URL, and then we return response JSON. So the response JSON will see what's our response from posting, but you should call it like this. So let's try to do something here. So go back to our Bulbasaur here, and let's try to enter this data here. What we can do, we can transform this JSON to normal JavaScript objects, but it doesn't really matter because JSON is normal database objects. It's normal JavaScript object, not normal database object. So we can change a little bit here, and then we can, so when there is a dot in the name, or when it's like a hyphen or something like that, you should put the quotation marks here. So these parts are totally fine to be like here. We'll delete the ID and we will call bulb clone. So we know it's a clone. It's a bulb clone. Okay. So we do something like this. So we call post data and then we put bulb clone or le bulb clone in here. So if you remember, it just auto updates. So every time this page will be in it, we actually create a new Pokemon. So let me try to go here to inspect and open the console. Fetch post data is not a function. Oh, I forgot actually to change this to create Pokemon. So this is actually create Pokemon and not post data. And this create Pokemon will go here and we'll change it. Create Pokemon from fetch, and then creates Pokemon every time we initialize the page. So let's see what happens here. Can't read property length of undefined. Let's see what's the problem here. Oh, okay, because we created the Pokemon. Okay. Let me filter. So you can filter this by HIR, so it's no problem. We can refresh the page. You will see there's 3 calls. So first one is for getting the data. The second one actually is, okay, the third one is posting. Ignore these options. I will explain maybe someday why is that needed. But you will see here that status code is different than our getting. So when we got our Pokemon, it's actually 200 okay, and now it's 201 created. When you create, when the status code like 200 to 300 is everything is okay and something happened on the backend. So here is just I got your Pokemon and everything's perfect, and here is I got your post data. You see request method is post, and we created something. That's cool. And you will see here in preview, we'll actually get the new ID of our Pokemon called Bulb Clone with everything like the types, Le Pokemon, you see, and our base here. And if you see in our data JSON, what happened, we got a new Pokemon. We actually got a few more because I pressed F5 a few times, but we got 3 new Pokemons here. And this is posted. And if you go to the end of it, you will see that there is. So what's the problem? Can get length of undefined, get background. Okay, we actually we probably broke something with our insane inserting here. So let me check it. Oh yeah, we had some problems here, so we can delete these 2 IDs. So what happens here? Yeah, it works fine. Cannot property again? Really? Okay. What we actually need to do is stop this, right? Then delete this data, then rerun it. Oh, there is also now there's the ID 809.833.84. Okay. So you will see on the end of everything, we have some bulb clones here. We cannot get these images, of course, because these are non-existent Pokemon. But every time we refresh, we will get actually 1 Pokemon more because we are creating it. So yeah, you will see that here are the new Pokemons called Bulb Clones. So it would be great that if we can generate new images of Pokemon, but unfortunately I'm not good at drawing. But okay. Oh man, some of these Pokemon like Buzzwole. What's happening here? It doesn't matter. Okay, so we created a new Pokemon and we send it to JSON server, and if we refresh it, we will get another new Pokemon here, right? Yeah, it's here. So that's pretty cool. So we know how to create new Pokemons. So what we actually need to do is run this query and you will get your data here. So there is a problem. Let's go back to script. So what we actually need to do is not call this every time that an HTML page loads, but actually when there should be some form, and we should like create a Pokemon from a form and not from here. So there is a good task for you here. Create a form for new Pokemon creation. So this is a pretty good task. You can use this create Pokemon part here for creating new Pokemons. And there is another good task for it, and it's called deleting Pokemon. So when we click on the Pokemon, maybe we should delete them, or maybe when we press on some X in a corner, we should delete the Pokemon there. And it's pretty simple to, let me close this, and it's pretty simple to do. What we need to do for deleting Pokemon, we can create a function here for that. In our fetch, we can actually say export async function delete Pokemon. We need to pass an ID. One thing that we need to do is actually, if there is no ID, if ID is undefined, we should throw an error. And how to do that is actually pretty easy. We just need to write here if ID doesn't exist. So if not ID, then throw new error you should define ID, or you should pass ID. Here you go. So this is how and throw new error works. And afterwards, what we need to do is actually delete the Pokemon. So we can pass our URL here. And then what we can do is the same thing, const response equals to await fetch URL. But now we should use delete. And a little bit different URL actually. We should, for deletion is a similar thing. We need to go one by one Pokemon and not like delete all Pokemons. So we actually, what we need to do is actually need to call something like this. URL like Pokemon/ID. So we actually need to pass it here, put a slash, and then our ID. Method should be delete. And then we can return await response JSON. So let's try to call delete Pokemon in our script. So back here we should put delete Pokemon and go back to our init part and write delete Pokemon with ID, I don't know, 5. Let's see what happens. Uh, 5 is Charmeleon. Let's see if we deleted it. Oh, I actually haven't recorded it. Let's refresh. No, something is not working. Delete bad request. Why is bad request? Why? You see 400 is there is some client error. So we said request method is delta. Oh man, it's too early in the morning on Saturday. On Saturday. So I sent delta and not delete. Oh man. In fetch, there should be something called delete here. Okay. So also there is 44 not found. Okay, fine. Why is that? Why is it 44? Because we had localhost URL 3000. What have I done here? Oh, I'm really stupid. There is an error here and I haven't seen. I'm doing this too fast. So, okay. There is delete Pokemon and it said, okay, nothing in there. There is still Charmeleon here because we haven't refreshed, but when we refresh, there is no Charmeleon here. And it said 44 not found because it hasn't found our Charmeleon here and tried to delete again. So actually what we can do here is actually delete Pokemon on click. So every time you click a Pokemon, you can delete it with this. The problem here is actually that you've seen that we tried to delete the Pokemon on 5, but the problem was we can try it again with 10 or 1. So we called delete Pokemon on 1, but actually we haven't refreshed our page. So what you can do as a task is actually on each creation of Pokemon or deletion of Pokemon, you can refetch everything and change the data. So you'll see the Bulbasaur will totally disappear here when you refresh. But what we need to do is on every deletion or creation of a Pokemon, you should fetch the data. Actually, what you can do is create similar to create Pokemon list, but just update Pokemon list. That will actually just do some magic here. You try to figure this out. This is the most hard part from all of this. So there is the first part, create a Pokemon form for creation, then delete on click, and then on every deletion or creation Pokemon you should refetch the data or just update the data. So these three things are, so this is the easiest one to do, and we did it first with like creating forms and so on. Delete Pokemon on click can be a little bit difficult to create, because on creation of new Pokemon you should have deleted on click, and on every deletion and creation of Pokemon you should update the data. This is quite a nice couple of tasks that will just up your game to like 100 of front-end development. And if you deleted accidentally your data, or as me, I deleted some Pokemon here, there is actually not here. Oh yeah, it is. It's called archive JSON. So if you deleted accidentally something, or it's not working anymore, or you created like an empty or something, you can just copy this archive into the data JSON and everything will be perfectly fine. Just so you know. So you don't delete. And I will push this so you will see tasks and what. So I'll push this so you can check it out on GitHub. You'll see that it will upload. Okay, merge branch. Okay, here, tasks and a bit of coding. You will see that our Pokemon project advanced in our not index.html, but script.js. Actually, here are the tasks that you can do. So, any questions, guys? So, anything at all? I will take this today and tomorrow to build a poll, to create new lectures and create new dates when the lectures will be. I need to update the calendar and do some stuff, cleaning. So you will see a lot of more of this and a lot more exercising, and not a lot more like lectures of let's try promises or something like that, because this is quite important for you and quite important for your front-end knowledge. So experience is much better than just like raw knowledge, like I know by heart how Fetch API works. I know all documentation by heart. That's not really useful in programming. Like the most useful thing in programming is understand when you can search like documentation and verify documentation, and understanding like patterns, like because like every REST API works in a similar way, and JSON server works perfectly for these examples. So if you understand like JSON server how it works, you will understand probably how other APIs work. Let me just see the chat and let me see if you caught up to me or you're still playbacking. Okay, so yeah, somebody is still playbacking. Yeah, if you can press like or subscribe if you're not subscribing, that helps a lot. At least I'm told that helps a lot. It will be cool. Okay, Viera, so that's awesome. Yeah, you can ask me on Slack. So Viera solved the exercises but haven't checked the solution. That's perfectly fine. You can ask me. Yeah. Okay, you won't push them to GitHub. Okay. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I can show you how to push them. So you can ask me in Slack. Maybe after lunchtime. So like 2-3 p.m. or later than that, because I'm going to make lunch today, so I'll be a little bit off my computer. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. If you solved your exercises, you can send it to me, or just send it to some Git repository, or just show me the code. That would be cool if you need any help with that, or you have any questions about that, or something like that. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, so I'll probably create a lot more exercises and a lot more like coding stuff, or maybe even like for you to create the apps from scratch. So I will create the configuration and put there like an empty index HTML and script.js and ask you to do something. That would be that's like the most similar to like real world problems, and like a real like a professional problems that you'll need. So let us create a form for our users. Let's create some visualization for a user. So maybe even to go in depth with some, I don't know, graphs or tables or some other way of visualization. Maybe even some maps. And in the future, maybe some libraries that are popular and how to use them in front end, and for you to like try to understand them, try to go to the documentation and find stuff, and then I can help you with that. And lectures I can do and give you like a shorthanded version of it. So that will be pretty cool. But then it's up onto you to actually finish them and do stuff with them and so on. So if there are not many more questions, are there? Or let me check also Slack if somebody asked me there. Okay, so there are no questions. That's fine, perfectly fine. I don't know. The new Pokemon are kind of out there. So, guys, okay, then hear from you on Slack. Let's chat a little bit later, and yeah, it was nice to live program a little bit with you. Okay, guys, see you later and hear from you about your exercises, and I will update my calendar. See ya, guys.